It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means, don't you? It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. I almost said Taxi's Quarantini Happy Hour, but no, that's tomorrow. Today we have special guest Greg Carrozza. And we are doing I Thought My Music Was Great at the Time. And Greg volunteered for this. What a chump. No, actually.
I'm pretty sure you asked. I think you asked me, Michael.
I did. I asked you. You were in the chat room, and I said, "Hey, Greg, I've got an idea." And you went, "Yeah, I'll do it." Anyway, and I'm really glad that you did. So I'll say hi to everybody in the chat room in a moment. But the premise behind today's show is that for the 29 years I've been running Taxi, people often say to me, "Oh, I can't believe the screeners didn't forward that. It was great." I want to make sure you guys are seeing me, right? Hi, Michael and Greg. Okay, yeah, they're seeing me. So people say, I can't believe the screener didn't forward that. It was great. And then 2 or 3 or 4 years later on our forum or somewhere, they'll go, oh, yeah, I was so awful my first year at Taxi. I can't believe it. But they never really go that public with it. So I said I wanted to do a show about this. I said, hey, Greg, would you send me some of your earlier stuff? And I got it. I just told Greg 30 seconds before we went live that when I opened the playlist last week, I went, this isn't bad enough. Apparently, Greg was better than the average person in his first year at Taxi. He had a lot of experience under his belt. And I've got to say, I listened to stuff and I went, well, this sounds totally pro. My gosh, maybe I can't do this show with Greg. And then I read what the screeners wrote and I went, oh, they're right. So it does sound pro, but there are deficiencies that he later made up for. So we're not going to play you the before and after because he took the before version, overdubbed, edited, and corrected and remixed on the early version. So he's only got the new, better, improved version. So what we're going to do is play you something, for instance, like in hip hop that was not good enough to get a forward. And then we'll play you another hip-hop track that he did later that was forwarded, just so that you can hear the difference when he absorbed the feedback from the screener. And you go, oh, wow, that makes a big, big difference. So thank you for volunteering under duress to do this. Anyway.
I'll keep my fingers crossed.
No, the stuff is real. Even the bad stuff is good. And that's saying something. Yeah. I remember one time I had Chuck Henry, I think it was Chuck Henry, Matt Vanderboe, and maybe even Stephen Barrett, all three of them on the show. And we played some before and afters from them. And some of the stuff was just downright like embarrassing, for lack of any better word. It's like, seriously? That, you called that music? But they got the last laugh now, didn't they?
Well, yeah.
Anyway, hello. I'm going to say a quick hello to some of you guys. I don't have enough time in this hour to say hello. Oh, Howling Wolf is in there. L. Harrison, Ronald Schultz, Jan Weilage, Michael Lehman, Dan Weber, Ken Mesford, Andre Stepanian, Marion Laird, Nandissimo, Stu Thaler, Charles Wilson, Jesse J. Peck. Hope you're feeling better and recovering well, buddy. Desi, hello, a new name to me. Robert L. Songs from a Headband. Carl Horrigan. Anyway, hello everybody. Super Blonde, the gang is all here. So let's get started. First of all, I want to give you a very brief bio about Greg, and it's only brief because he wrote it or somebody wrote it and put it on his website. And I mean, I think he's got a lot more stuff to talk about, but he's from the school of let's not brag too much and people will like me better. No, it's
try.
Anyway, Greg is a composer, a keyboardist, engineer, and producer with 30 plus years of experience, and it shows. Currently writing instrumental music for TV and film and advertisements, as well as co-writing and producing songs. He composes in many styles like pop, EDM, hip-hop, tension, and solo piano. And notable is that he co-wrote and produced the song Will You Be My Girl for Alex B., which has generated over 92 million views on YouTube. That's substantial.
Yeah, that was a huge surprise, but that's just a track that took off. Yeah.
I think that you should only co-write with people who have the like Cardi B, Alex B. You know?
Initials only, right?
Yeah, and B. It's got to be a B.
B. I'll keep that in mind.
Anyway, so let's get right into it. Once again, we are doing I Thought My Music Was Great at the Time. So I've got to ask you, did you, I mean, clearly you didn't think this is directed I'm sending into Taxi. It was by your estimation, wow, this is good enough. I'm proud of it. And you submitted it. And yeah, is that the case?
Oh, absolutely. Sure. I thought everything that I submitted was as good as I could make it at the time. But that's the key to this whole show is at the time. You know, it took time. It took feedback to learn what I was and wasn't doing right. And so we're going to see throughout all these tracks, you know, the kinds of things that I did wrong and tried to improve on over time. But luckily, like you said, I don't think anything. I think I started out maybe at a point where sonically nothing is bad, you know. So that's a positive.
Yeah, stuff does sound good.
Yeah. So it really all comes down to, you know, arrangement, composition, that kind of stuff, sound choices, things like that. So hopefully that's what we'll get out of it today.
You know what I thought as I got like down to the fourth pair of kind of before and afters, I thought to myself, you know, it's not that Greg was bad because the stuff sounds professional. It's you don't know what you don't know until somebody tells you what you don't know, which, yeah, you just said, and I just padded for time there by repeating it. Yeah. That's the key to being a yeah, it really is. You know, it's not easy being a talk show host. All right, let me get the computer fired up here. Okay, so this first one is called Ace in the Hole, and I'm assuming that it was, because I've listened to this, it was submitted for a hip-hop listing?
Yeah, so this was, I think it was specifically asking for something relevant to sports.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. All right, so I'm going to play it, and then I'm going to read what Greg was nice enough to include some of the verbiage that the screeners gave him in response. So I'll play it. I'll read what the screener wrote. Then I'll play the newer track, which was like the new improved Greg's version of hip-hop. And then I'll go to Greg and get some commentary, and then we'll move on to the next pair of them. So here we go. This is Ace in the Hole.
That's tough to listen to.
Well, I really I'm not being facetious when I say I'm deeply appreciative that you agreed to do this, because, look, anybody who creates anything art-wise, always wants people to go, wow, that's really good. I mean, you'd be a fool if you didn't. So to, kind of expose your weakest moments, it takes a lot of courage, so thank you. But it did sound good. It sounded pro. And immediately I went, why did he send me this stuff? It doesn't sound like crap. But it doesn't at all. But I saw people in the chat room mentioning some of the stuff that the screener said. So I will tell you guys now what the screener said. Hi, Greg. Pleasure listening to your music this morning. Nice groove and horn melody out of the gate. See, he agreed, or she, whatever it was, agreed out of the gate. Sounds pro. The stabs, drums, and bass are all solid. The bottom kind of drops out around the 30-second mark. There's nothing wrong with the breakdown, but the re-entry needs to hit with a bang and not a full minute later into the tune. That was pretty obvious. At first I went, wow, that's a cool breakdown. There shouldn't be a problem with that. And then it's like, okay, it's not a breakdown anymore. It's a completely other cue at this point. It was long.
Right.
The melody from 30 to 130 is somewhat absent, and what there is could really be more bold and aggressive on every level. All good ideas here, but everything needs to be more pronounced for sports music.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So I just at that time I didn't know what I was doing. So so yeah, it broke down a little. It broke down soon. I repeated that main melody from the beginning too many times. I really should have just stuck with an A-B-A format, which is you're going to hear more in more of my forward work as we go through. But, state that first section, break it down, bring it back, bigger. That's basically what I should have done, but that's not what I did in that track.
But you didn't know what you didn't know. Yeah.
Right.
Speaking of things that go nowhere, I was here on Saturday for about 8 hours-ish. And I decided that I was going to listen to some of the music that the kids today are using to study, because I wanted to be super productive and have a really good 8-hour session at work with nobody bothering me. So at one point, I went to a New Age for Productivity thing on YouTube, and I played it. It was 3 hours. I'm not exaggerating this one tiny little bit. It was 3 hours of 5-4-1. Just... 3 hours of the same exact thing. And here's the funniest part is, I want to say, I actually emailed somebody about it. It had something ridiculous like 210 million views.
Wow.
Yeah. So apparently there are a lot of people that don't care when music doesn't go anywhere. Or maybe they fell asleep to it and didn't turn it off. I don't know. Right. Anyway.
Sometimes it's the right thing. Sometimes it's not the right thing. It's not the right thing here.
Yeah. All right. So now we're going to listen to... Oh, Greg, by the way, a couple people asked in chat about what year was this when you did Ace in the Hole.
Wow. Probably about 2.5 years ago, maybe end of 2018-ish or beginning of 2019.
Wow.
Late 2018, I think.
And do you remember about the time span between what we just heard and the newer track that we're going to hear, which is Slam Dunk?
Newer one I did late, probably 6 months ago, about 6 months ago. Yeah.
All right, so a couple of years apart, roughly. Okay. All right, this is Slam Dunk. Wow, dramatically better, like really impressive. So, anything you want to add?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the things there to me are obviously different. First of all, the main melody that starts at the beginning, the pitch is lower, and that was kind of something I've learned along the way. I didn't get that from the specific feedback on this, but I did learn that along the way. In that, if there's going to be voiceover, you've got to not try to play a melody in the same pitch range as someone's voice. So it's going to have to be much higher or lower. So in this case, it's lower. Now at the end, of course, when it's getting bigger, I doubled it with higher octaves and that kind of thing. But generally, when the beginning of the track is used and someone is talking, it's lower. The second thing, arrangement wise, is just what we talked about before, which is I only used that theme at the beginning, and at the end had a breakdown in the middle, and that was all. And that breakdown, while it lost a lot of low end sonics, the energy kept going throughout. Where in my first track, I think it gets lost, it kind of just dies. And that's not what we wanted to do. So I kept that going with some hand claps, that kind of thing. Again, high pitched percussive elements type of things. And that keeps that energy going.
Yeah, you made it. People should remember that this would be good for sports highlight stuff, sports in general. Very gridiron feeling, to it. But you kept the interest there. But I had the thought about halfway through, this is like delightful for an editor. Any video editor cutting picture and needs music, it's like you had 3 or 4 different ways that it was interesting in there, yet it all felt like the same piece of music, and that's the goal with the cue. So
right, and the big thing is to change up every 4 bars for certain, to change up what you're doing and to put in hard edit points and that kind of stuff, which again is good for this type of a thing because it just makes it easy to cut, from one section to the other based on whatever the need is. I mean, particularly in hip hop, I think they don't even care about stating a full musical idea. They'll cut the song off on beat 2.
Right.
It doesn't matter. So what you need to have is the rhythm is what's strong. And actually, melodically, it's a little secondary because they'll be able to cut it more easily that way.
Did you change? Did you have newer sample libraries that you were working with on the second one, or was it pretty much the same range of?
No, it's definitely some newer things. Or I have to say, I had access to newer things. What I actually used, I can't say off the top of my head if I use something newer or not. I may have, but I may not have to. I'm not sure.
Right. Well, you don't remember every minute of your life.
No, I try, but I don't.
I think it's time for a Prevagen ad.
Nice.
All right. Let's move on. All right, this next one is called Hold Up.
Right.
And I will read what the screener wrote after we have a listen. All right, so let's see, who was it that said? Veronica Pellegrini said, "Hi, Greg. My kids are dancing and saying I love it." So there you go. You've got a fan base.
That's right. Hi, Veronica.
And hi, kids. I'll watch my language throughout the rest of the show. Okay, so the screener said you did a good job of establishing the groove and the hook. However, the track sounds too empty and doesn't have a compelling hip-hop beat that could set the tone and vibe of the spots we're targeting. So your thoughts, anything?
Okay. Well,
because it sounded pretty good.
That's a difficult one, I think. That's a little bit later than my first Before track. So I was getting better when I did that one. But I guess it was exactly what it was. Well, I guess without knowing what the listing was asking for specifically, this is probably one of those things where it just didn't fit that listing very well. Mm-hmm. That's all I can say about that, I think. The rhythm elements might have been a little weak. Maybe they're a little older sounding. I don't know. Yeah, and the tempo was a little fast also. I think for this was definitely a current beat, and I probably made this a little fast, and I should have made it a slower tempo.
There are a lot of libraries that would probably take this, and it would probably get used every now and then, but the standard shouldn't be, it might be good enough. The standard should be, is it something that's better than most of the stuff that library has been signing recently and what they've been servicing their clients with. So maybe it didn't meet that bar. I don't know. It was pretty darn good. But in the Olympics, or trying to get into Harvard, although now they got rid of standardized testing so I could get into Harvard. But finally, I wish my mom hadn't passed away so she could see me go to Harvard. Anyway,
nice. Yeah. I think one more thing I think I could say about it is also I think it's more of a laid back feel. The energy level of the whole thing is a bit down. So that again might have been a little not what the listing really needed in the end. So like you said, it's probably good enough for certain things. It didn't fit what this particular listing was looking for, and I think that's one of the reasons.
I used to do tons of audio posts on sports television back when I lived in New York. This would be great for the up close and personals when they do the little, oops, let me get rid of that. When they do those little segments, about, and he was the star of the high school football team. And when they do that moment where, and he's contemplating how long it'll take him to come back after that injury, you could use 8 seconds of that for that, but not for the highlight reel.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So now we're going to listen to Apple Cart Upset, and this one did get signed, did get forwarded. And let's see. All right. Again, lots of comments in the chat room about it. People were definitely liking it better than the first one. Somebody asked if you made the beats or did you use loops?
No, I don't use any loops really. I mean, sometimes might I might come across a loop that maybe has some sounds in it that I like, so I might carve it up and grab, the kick or the clap or something like that. But usually I don't use any other loops.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure I didn't in this one. But I mean, so this is like you can tell than the previous one, and the tempo is a bit faster as well, quite a bit actually. Yeah, so that was kind of a big deal.
Stu Thaler wants to know what percentage of your submissions get forwarded.
That's a good question. It's slowly been going up, but it's not going up as fast as I want. So probably around about 60%.
That's pretty darn good.
Something like that.
Yeah,
I get on it. There's absolutely no reason for this, but I somehow get on the streaks. Like I get like 14 or 15 in a row forwarded, and then I get like 7 or 8 returned in a row. I get big streaks in a row. It's not really meaningful. It just happens to happen.
Different genres or anything? Any contributing factors to that?
Not that I know of. No, I try to, I kind of mix it up now. Because we're now going to get into some different genres here, and I do different things. So now it's just probably the luck of the draw.
All right. Now we're going to hear across the board. Here we go. All right, people are going, and that was a return? Let's see, where was I? Okay, there we go. Okay, so you got to remember. Whoa, I lost him. Greg, where'd you go? I'm sorry, were you offended, Greg? Come back. Liz, can you call Greg and just tell him to go through the process? Oh, I think he's getting it. There we
go. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what happened. You dropped me for a second there.
No, I didn't drop you. I think it was
I dropped me.
The universe dropped you. I didn't touch anything. It happens sometimes.
Just
anyway,
happened.
So some people are saying, "Wow, I can't believe that didn't get forwarded." But you have to remember, just because a piece of music is great or strong or wonderful, doesn't mean that it fit what the brief asked for, what the listing asked for. And remember, we talked about this on a recent episode. I can't remember if it was a Quarantini or a regular Taxi TV, and I said, should we have a B list of stuff that the screeners heard that's good but not on target? And the overwhelming majority of you, which really surprised me, said no. If somebody coined the phrase, if it doesn't fit, then don't submit. And that's true. If we have like a B list of this is really good but didn't fit the listing, then people will just submit everything they can all the time thinking, well, it's really good. They'll forward it anyway. And we can't. Sorry to say. Okay, so what the screener said was track sounds more contemplative and borderline melancholy in the first half of the cue than what is suggested in the listing criteria, being emotionally uplifting for possible sports promos and Olympic competitions. Many times the first 30 seconds or less is all an editor would listen to before deciding to move on or listen further. And I got to say, I'm proud of whichever screener wrote that because they were right on the money. Mm-hmm. It was an awesome piece of music. I can't imagine that being used for whatever, emotional uplifting and sports promos or Olympic competitions. It could be used for she tore her Achilles tendon and had to go back to Peoria, but that kind of Olympics,
Right.
You were in the Olympics, but not
Right.
You're still in the Olympics. So,
well, I think the key there was the first 30 seconds. I think ultimately what's wrong with that piece is I just took way too long to get to the uplifting portion. It gets uplifting when the big toms come in and all that kind of stuff and the high violins, but it just took way too long to get to that, and that was really what was wrong with this.
Yeah, because it was a great piece of music. Everybody was right. Okay, and this one is
everybody was right.
See, I could have been a family therapist. You're all right.
All right.
All right, this one is called Reaching Up, also mysteriously enough by Greg Carrozza. Good title, by the way. Excellent. Um, yeah, this one did get forwarded. Basically, the premise of the show leads us to the first one didn't get forwarded. Here's why not. The second one got forwarded, and here's why. Um, so, what do you want to tell us about that one?
Well, I'm pretty sure these listings were a little different from each other, but one thing about this one reaching up is that I think I remember that it was meant to be it was asked to be basically on based on piano, no percussion, that kind of thing. So that's why you hear those differences between those two pieces. I didn't use any percussion in that piece, and it started with piano, and piano was remained through the whole piece. But it definitely was uplifting and not melancholy. That was kind of the mood was more right, and so that was the key. At least I think it got forwarded.
Yeah, and it was totally pro, and you couldn't pinpoint anything about it that didn't work. It fired on all cylinders, as they say. Andre Stepanian asked earlier, which libraries do you believe are must-haves for hip-hop and EDM? Do you have any preference or recommendations?
That's a great question. I use so many different things. It just depends on what I'm going for. I most recently started using XO by XLN Audio, which has been really good at being able to organize the sounds that you're using. But I also use Alum Arcade from Output. There's a lot of great material in there. Lots of ideas. Like I said, I don't usually use loops as is, but I get a lot of good ideas from there for sure.
They came that close to being a sponsor of the Road Rally last year. I hope I can get them this year because I think a lot of that company. They're a good company. They put out great products. I also love their desks that they put out there, gear desks. My son-in-law, I think, knows the CEO, and he got one, and it's slick. Anyway, and Michelle Lane wants to know, what are your favorite recommended orchestral libraries? What did you use on that one, if you remember?
Oh, wow. That's a good one. Since I don't do a ton of it, I really haven't invested a lot in that. I'm probably using, like, a while back for other sounds. I think I got Sample Tank 4 from IK Multimedia. So I'm probably using the orchestral sounds from there.
Okay.
For the most part. So they're certainly not super high end. Like, you could spend a ton of money with Spitfire, and all their sounds are obviously fantastic. But with the amount of it that I do, I haven't really invested heavily in those kind of sounds.
I remember thinking, as I heard the high violins in that one, and I'm a retired engineer, and I've done a lot of actual string dates, and I really liked the timbre and texture of the high string part in there. It sounded authentic, and all by its lonesome had an emotional quality to it because of the timbre and texture. So good job on that.
Awesome. Another part about doing strings, and I don't know if I'm looking down the list. Probably it's not going to come up in any other tracks, so I can say it real quick right here. Part of it is playing parts that are natural to that instrument.
Right.
I mean, that actually, that doesn't go for strings. It goes for just about any instrument, really. So, when you start playing a violin part and it's too low in the register, or it's crossing over strings that you'd never do, or that kind of stuff, you could have the most realistic sounding samples there are, and that's going to sound terrible because it's not what a player would play. And conversely, and there's a minimum here, but conversely, if you have parts that are natural and would be what a player would play, you can get by with lesser quality samples because it sounds like those instruments would be playing those parts that they're playing. One of especially the keys to strings, I am a cellist, although I haven't really been a cellist for quite a long time, but I did learn way back in the day that to orchestrate strings is to kind of treat every part like it is a melody, and then when you put them all together, They sound like a group. But if you listen to any one of them, it could actually stand by itself. And if you do that kind of a thing, then you're usually going to have good string arrangements. Particularly, again, you don't want to jump all over the place and a high note, then a low note, and back to the middle. You keep it kind of flowing, and that's usually what works out.
Well, I didn't know that you were a cellist, but I don't really care about your religious or political beliefs.
Nice.
I don't care if you belong
really
to
appropriate.
I don't believe that, or I don't care if you're in a cult, Greg. It's okay. Anyway, that was all very well said. I've heard that. Dean Krippain said that like 3 years ago, and I had him on the show. And he's kind of a little bit famous for making really good sounding tracks with just the cheapest, like crappiest sample libraries, stuff that's like laughingly old, but he knows how to use it well, and he respects that rule of, don't play a cello part on a violin. It's not going to sound right. So
exactly.
Thank you for sharing that. All right, moving on. Now we're going to hear, it's funny, if you look at the waveform on Reaching Up, you can actually just
see it go up.
Absolutely. Yeah. If I were an editor and I saw that waveform and I were looking for something with an emotional build, I would be drawn to that just because of the waveform. All right, this one's called Alter Ego. That was cute and creative.
I was hoping that was the end.
And you wrote it. By the way, somebody asked earlier, does Greg mix and master his own stuff? And the answer is yes. I don't even have to ask him that because I know that. And by the way, that last one that we listened to was Investigative Tension. So the screener said, what did I just play?
Alter Ego.
Alter Ego. Okay. Investigative Tension. Screener said, good pulsing synth to help build anticipation. Unfortunately, the cue takes too long to build, and it becomes a bit repetitive and never really reaches a pinnacle to evoke real tension, danger, conflict, and distress. So I was listening to that going, I could see somebody looking through a microscope at a virus listening to that. But the screener looked beyond where, it would work for that. They wanted it to be better than the rest and mentioned stuff they felt you were missing. Did you agree with the screener?
Yeah, eventually.
Right after some of that, right?
Right after I punched the wall.
Yeah.
No, exactly. Hope again,
I didn't need that.
Just like in one of the previous tracks, I took too long to get to like the change, which is, I learned also along the way, not from this feedback, but I learned along the way from the great Steve Barden, that these kind of cues should really be done like an A-B section kind of a thing, as opposed to what I do with hip hop and pop and those kind of things, where I usually do kind of like A, B, which is a breakdown section, and then back to A. So this is more like, this should be a little bit more A, B, or A only, depending upon what's needed. And so in this case, I really kind of did it A, B. And that was, it was the worst of both combinations. If it was going to stay the same, it needed to stay the same in an interesting way. And if it was going to change, it needed to change sooner. And so I failed to do either with this track.
Wow, it's really good that you are able to self-analyze. Maybe the screener gives you a prompt and makes you look, but your analysis of your own work is better than most people would do, I think. So hats off to you, buddy.
Well, thanks, but that's definitely, in hindsight. Because like I said at the beginning of the show, I thought this stuff was great, and I sent it in.
Right.
And so, it took me, it took a lot of time afterwards to really figure out, well, why is that not good enough, and how do I do better?
Yeah, but
and titles is another thing. Titles is another thing. I mean, a lot of my first titles here are just kind of stupid. I've tried to get better at that over time. It's a really hard thing, but it is an important thing.
Well, I would say on the whole,
titles that means something.
Your titles on the whole are better than most people's. So the fact that you're paying attention to that, working at it, shows off or shows.
Well, it's not like song number 12.
Right. Midnight mix, no coffee.
Right. I went through a period where I thought I could make a title out of basically any adjective and any noun, a two-word title out of any adjective and noun. I have some like that. They stink.
Funny sheep. Okay.
Right.
Or in Cass McKenty's case, it would be hysterical goats.
Right.
Okay, so now we're moving on to Magic Energy.
Oh, you didn't play the forwarded track,
which was Outbreak.
It's called Outbreak. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. All right, here
Better
we go.
title too.
This is I thought for some reason the last one I played. Oh, last one was Alter Ego. This one's Outbreak. Got it. Here we go.
Right.
Excellent.
Okay. So you could hear there like that break right in the middle of the track. A, B. I brought in like a completely new melody element for the B section, and yet the intensity continues to rise through the whole thing.
Yeah.
So that's what, different from the first track entirely.
Question for you from Greg Vaughn. In 90 seconds to 2 minutes, in a 90-second to 2 minute cue, how long would you spend in the B section? That's a valid question. A good question, I mean.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so if I'm doing ABA tracks, well, obviously it depends on the tempo, of course. So it's usually a musical amount of time. So usually 16 bars is what I do, and then kind of go back.
Okay.
But if it's extremely slow, that might be a little too long, and I try to make it 12. But generally 16. Or on the flip side, if it's really upbeat EDM, like 130 beats a minute, then that might take another 8 bars to really, be enough time. But generally that's all.
Do you ever finish a cue, listen to it and go, wow, I totally nailed it, and then the next day you listen to it and go, that's just way too slow or way too fast? It's like, ah, crap.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mostly it's too slow. I find myself speeding things up after I do them. And I think again, I guess it depends on the genre, but I'll find myself feeling, oh, this is really groovy, and then I come back to it and say, it just drags. It would definitely be improved by being a few beats per minute faster, for sure.
Right. Okay. Now we're on to Magic Energy, and this was the one that got returned. Let's have a listen.
Mm-hmm.
Love that sound. All right, I've got a comment, which is Alex Hightower just said, this feels very Temptation Island to me. I like it. Too busy, maybe? Alex, you need to stop watching that show. It's trash. It makes the Kardashians look like they're Mensa members.
Nice.
Yeah,
sounds about right.
No more listings from that show. Sorry. Anyway, okay, so what the screener said on that one was your beats don't have the driving rhythmic style that stands out enough. Developing the percussion edgier and in a style that drives the energy and vibe of the track would be ideal for this spot. So this must have been for a TV commercial. I have a very specific request. The beat would need to stand out more rhythmically. The track isn't exciting enough to be as standout as it needs to be. I've got to say, there were a lot of cool things in that track. It was really good, but I immediately said I would just have the beat, like, needs to be much ballsier. Most of the rhythm was happening in the keyboard part, not in the beat. So anyway, your feelings?
Right. Yeah, it was all just 4 on the floor kick, and I didn't do a whole lot else with the rhythm. And the whole middle section went on too long. That's for sure. I didn't get back to a bit biggerness soon enough either.
Biggerness.
Biggerness.
I love it.
more biggerness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but you can see that. I mean, I'm starting to incorporate things like little vocal sounds, not lyrics, but like vocalizations. It's extremely popular now in a bunch of styles. It's in my hip hop tracks, it's in my pop tracks, it's in my EDM tracks. So even though that was in there, I just didn't nail it on the beat aspect.
Troy Cummings, just for your. Did you resubmit some of these? I see. I thought you said did you submit some of these? Did you resubmit any of these?
Actually, I'm taking a look at like this one. This one I actually this one I signed with a publisher who asked me for a couple other tracks and said, "Do I have anything like it?" And I said, "Sure." And I didn't. I would figured, why change it? Just let him hear it and let him say change it. He said, "This is great," and took it.
Wow.
So I guess, like I said, it wasn't. It didn't meet. It didn't meet this particular listing for those rhythmic aspects, but it met what the specific publisher wanted in the group of tracks that I gave him. So I didn't change this one. I signed it as is.
My least favorite thing about running Taxi all these years is when somebody posts online, yeah, this track didn't get forwarded when I submitted it, but it got picked up by a publisher 6 months later. Well, of course, the publisher may listen to it and go, I could get this placed someday. Something might come in. Or their client base uses a lot of that kind of music, whereas when it was submitted for the Taxi listing, it was something very specific, especially if it was for a TV commercial. The bar was probably like super high because the payday was also very high. So, yeah, a lot of good stuff. I'm telling you, even your bad stuff is pretty darn good. Yeah, it is.
I don't suck. It took me a while to get to that realization, and now that's basically how I introduce myself to others. I don't suck.
Right. It's kind of like
I'm right above sucking.
It's like going to AA. My name is Greg.
Yes.
My name is Greg, and I don't suck.
I don't suck. Somehow I can make some music that some people think is okay.
All right. This one is the more recent, better version of something called Bring Up.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I like that one.
Everybody liked that one. You know, it's so funny
pretty good
because
one.
the previous one certainly didn't suck, but everybody's
Right.
like, "Wow, that's pretty good," you know. And then you hear this and go, "Okay, now I understand the difference between A and A plus." I used to have a very close friend. I guess we're still friends. We just don't keep in touch much. But his name was Marshall Altman, and he was in a band called Farmer that was somewhat successful. I think they were signed to maybe Capitol. And then he eventually became an A&R person at Capitol, and then went on to be an A&R person at Columbia Records. Very well known in A&R circles, spoke at many road rallies. We were regular golf partners practically every Friday when the weather was nice. And Marshall used to always say, the floor is bad. In the ballroom, he would point to the floor and say, the floor is bad. The ceiling is good. The sun is great. It's so true. And that was the sun that we just heard. It was so obvious how much better. There was nothing wrong really with that, the one before it. This one was just much better.
Right.
Good job.
Yeah. Now that one's been placed in like 3 different shows so far as I know. And it's really, it really only comes from that. It's just got a high level of energy. It's just up there. And it's, I don't know where it came up with the idea to kind of break down the middle section to cut time. Halftime, I'm sorry. But, I guess the tempo was so high, I thought I could still get away with that. And I think I had a usage where they just used the bridge, which was totally different from the beginning of the track. But yeah, it goes back to those vocal samples and that kind of stuff. That's what kind of led to the melody.
Somebody asked, can you use vocal samples in instrumentals? My answer to that would be, as long as they're non-lyrical, oohs, ahs, maybe even like a word or something like that. They just can't be a lyric and tell a story. Would you say that's a fair statement?
Yeah. What I did there in that track was kind of string together syllables of I think it's like a blah, 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 blah sound. So I just used that. Played a melody, put a little effects on it, that kind of stuff to kind of make it a little bit more like a seamless kind of a sound and not so percussive. So it has like that vocal quality without being singing.
I'm actually going to sample you doing blah, blah, blah and use that as my ringtone.
Nice.
That was great. Okay, so now we're moving on to... and somebody asked, yes, everything we played, the first one didn't get forwarded, the second one did get forwarded. Now remember, forwarding has not that much to do with quality. Obviously, if it sucks, our word of the day, our drink word of the day. If it's terrible, it's not getting forwarded. But there are plenty of times where stuff is good. It can't be forwarded. I'm going to give the shoe store analogy. I used to sell shoes. If a lady came into the shoe store and said, I need a size 7.5B Pot-a-Soie pump to match my bridesmaid dress for a wedding next week, and I brought out a gentleman's Cordovan penny loafer Bass Weegan in a 9.5D, yes, they're both shoes, and they're both damn good shoes. But that lady couldn't wear the penny loafer to the wedding unless she was trying to make a statement. Okay, moving on. This one is called Mischief Ensues. Great title. And the screener said, by the way, that was Urban Dramedy is the style, Mischief Ensues was the title, very appropriate. The screener said, I think this is a little repetitive and needs more sectional development. Avoid repeating sections as is without adding another significant layer, sound, instrument, or voice. The pitsy strings are good, but I'd add some more layers to them as you progress, especially as you get closer to the end. Like,
sounds about right.
Yeah, they're doing their job. That was great advice.
Like that flute section, it goes on twice as long as it should. I should have changed that up to a different instrument or added something to it, and not come back to it later. And then the end, I really didn't build it up any bigger than using the same pizzicato strings. I think what I thought I was doing was, toward the end, I dropped everything and went just to the pizzicato strings, where at the beginning of the track, I think the hand clap is in from the very beginning, or maybe the hi-hat and the hand clap are in from the very beginning. So I thought that I was creating something bigger at the end by having something less before it. And that tends to work, generally. Didn't work this time.
Okay.
But usually that's the thing, sometimes when somebody wants something to be bigger, a lot of the times you can achieve that by making what preceded it smaller.
It's just hard to have pitsy strings kind of be bigger, right?
Right. Exactly.
It's like, can a sparrow be bigger than an eagle?
Right. So what I could have done there, what I probably should have done there, like the very last time through, is maybe double it with an octave higher. Maybe change it from pizzicato to spiccato, where you're just playing really short on the bow, so this sounds different, but the melody is the same. Or add like another contrapuntal line with a different sound, kind of thing. So just make it be fuller. But I think I did none of those in this track.
And once again, watch your language. There are kids watching.
Yes, you're right. I'm sorry about that. So everybody contrapuntals there.
Cellos at a really low octave could have added some beef to that. I don't know, whatever. I mean, there are a bunch of ways to accomplish, but the screener was right that it was almost delicate or something at the end. Ewart had a question when you, and this probably I should take this, but you know the answer. When you resubmit something, can or does the screener know that it was submitted previously and returned? The answer to that, Ewart, is no. The screeners are pretty much in the dark. They don't know. It could be that the same screener might have returned it on a previous listing, but they don't know what other screeners did, so they're not influenced by that at all. Okay, now we're going to listen to Puzzle Pieces, which is what Greg created after he became so incredibly knowledgeable and enlightened.
Nice. Yep. I see. I didn't remember this, but I did there. I did there in that piece exactly what I said I didn't do in the first one. When it came to the ending, there is I added another, like a cello part that was in between the melody. I went up another octave and had another octave of violins above the first melody, and that just made the ending sound a little bit bigger, without, not obviously not huge, but bigger than the beginning.
Yeah, it was clearly just a better piece. This is real. I'm so glad that you said yes and agreed to do this, because this is very educational. I wish every single Taxi member would watch this, because they'd go, oh, I'm guilty of many of the things that he was guilty of, earlier in his career as well. And it's not to put anybody down or make them feel bad. This is all uplifting, really.
Yep.
Okay, so we've got a couple more to go. That was puzzle pieces. This is Tropical Pop, and it's called Breezy Sunset. Great title. Another great track that doesn't suck.
Thanks.
That had so many charm. That had so much charm to it, and I love the melody synth melody. If you speak English, it almost sounds like spoken word or something. I mean, it sounds like somebody's singing, and it lends itself to making you feel like there's a human involved in the track when it's just fingers on a keyboard. Awesome. Anyway, so the screener said, you might amplify your transitions with more build-ups and drops and work on achieving a more dynamic mix. Perhaps more distinct effects treatments on certain elements like the vocal sample. See, I disagree. I like the vocal sample.
Well, yeah,
anyway.
that was early on, and I was like just starting to get the clue that I should use those vocal kinds of sounds, and I guess I was treating them in a little plainly, and transitions from section to section. I was just learning what to do, particularly in this style of tropical pop. It's a little bit different, it's done a lot more with the drums and not necessarily other kinds of sounds, and then there was that part where I just kind of stopped. You thought it was the end, but it actually wasn't.
Right.
Yeah, that was wrong. Like I shouldn't have done that. Yeah, I shouldn't have done that.
I've got to
It should
say,
have had like a bass sound that dropped down, or it probably should have been half as long as it was. The rest should have come in sooner. I probably let that ring out too long. That kind of thing.
that brings up a common thing that I hear when people read in the listings. We've actually taken the words edit points out of a lot of the listings because people were overdoing it. But if you've ever been to one of our conventions, the Taxi Road Rally, the last two that we did live in person at the Westin LAX, we had a young lady who's a very high-end reality show video editor, and she got up on stage. We actually got a segment, a couple of scenes from current reality shows, and some actual music library tracks from a working library, and we can't do that, on YouTube, unfortunately, because the stuff has to be ephemeral. It's like you heard it in the ballroom, and then that's all you're going to hear it because it's actual, intellectual property. But the point, she made many great points. She was very articulate and a very great teacher. Editors love an edit point, somewhere where they can, because they don't use, for those of you who are new and don't know the complete drill yet, they don't use the whole cue. They use 9 seconds here, 27 seconds there, 12 seconds, whatever. They cut it to the scene. So they need places where they can get in and where they can get out. That's why they like button or stinger endings. They're like boom, because that ends on they'll do what's called back timing, which is they make that hit on the end of the scene and then back time the track to see, okay, so we came in 41 seconds ago, where would the track be 41 seconds ago? And they try to find a beat they can come in on. All those things go into the process. So when we have traditionally put the words, it's good to have an edit point in the listings, edit points can be a full rest. And sometimes that's very useful to an editor, but you have to be careful because sometimes a full rest does exactly what I did on that one, which was like, oh, it's over. Nobody
thought it was over.
Yeah. And so the editor might miss the best part of your track when they're in audition mode. So it's, on one hand, you want to do it. On the other hand, it can be a dangerous moment. Mm-hmm. All right. We are closing in. So now we're going to listen to Savannah, which was the newer, better, more awesomer track.
Right.
Awesome. And your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I like that one better. Uh, no, I mean that's just groovy. But in terms of comparing it to the other one, again, I didn't have the stupid break in the middle that didn't make sense. I kept the feel going throughout the whole thing, even though it broke down a lot. Still using, a vocal kind of effect, but it had a different treatment on it, so it was kind of like really ethereal sounding, and it just kind of fit that rhythm a little bit better. But one thing I did there, I was just remembering when I was listening to it. It probably doesn't sound like it, but to change up the melody in each 4 bars. In the second 4 bars, I actually shifted it up an octave and shifted it back a 16th. So it's like a pre-echo. And
Wow.
and here's the reason why. And I got the idea in a completely different place. I think I was just happened to be listening to Little Red Corvette, where Prince does that. I mean, he did it like on 2 different tracks. It wasn't doing it in the machine, but he actually made the echo, the lyric, come before the actual lyric. So that just kind of gave me that idea, and I tried that, and it seemed to work out. It's mixed quieter, and it just kind of gives it a different rhythmic feel. So it doesn't stand out like that's what's happening, but it just kind of changes it up a little bit.
I'm just digesting, going back to my analog days.
Oh.
Yeah, okay, I'll figure that out when I'm off the clock. All right, I want to let everybody know, I want to go a few minutes long on this just because we've got 2 more pieces of music to listen to, solo piano stuff that Greg has done. Do you guys want to go 15 minutes long and go 45 minutes after the hour so we can get a little more Q&A in with Greg at the end of this? Let me know while we're playing this. Are you okay to go?
I wish I were, but I really can't. I mean, if we go 5, 6, or 7 over, I'm okay. But I've got actually another appointment that I couldn't reschedule. I wanted to, but I couldn't. So,
Greg,
I'm sorry about that.
What could possibly be more important than Taxi TV? I mean, seriously.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No, that's fine. That's totally cool. I'm sure we will have you back, but this has just been wonderful. Okay. Now
you'll have me back to embarrass myself again in the future.
No, next time I won't have you embarrass yourself. And you shouldn't be embarrassed. Everybody thought this was incredibly good. Okay, so this is solo piano. This one's called Lost Feelings. I can hear you typing.
Oh, sorry.
Right. Well, I definitely think that the typing sound in the track was just abhorrent.
That was horrible. I really should have taken that out before sending that in.
Let's see. The screener said, or no, that's actually your feet on on the pedals of the C7.
Yes.
Frantically.
I was working the pedal heavily.
I like the chord progression, but the listing is clear about asking for high quality sounds from the piano and strings. The piano is boomy and voiced to emphasize the low chord structure, adding to the issues with the sound. I completely agree with that. How did you feel?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay. All right.
No,
now
I was going for like an old kind of a piano sound, but it was definitely in that, I voiced chords low, and that was definitely a problem. I've subsequently signed that track with more strings on it, real violin, and actually it's Veronica Pellegrini who's on the chat, who played violin on it, and it raised the key, and that made all the difference in the world on that track.
Awesome. Okay, and this one is the new improved solo. I'm assuming this is solo piano or close to it. It's called Absence is Sorrow.
I almost got you with that, but it was just fast enough. It came back just soon enough.
I'd also been looking at something online, and I wasn't paying attention for like 10 seconds, so I thought better safe than sorry. Anyway, a couple people asked, is that a real piano or a sample?
Nope, no real piano.
Okay.
I think that's probably a combination of pianos. I don't usually use one set of samples. So I think that is probably Addictive Keys by XLN Audio, and also Alicia's keys from Native Instruments, I think. Yeah, it's a contact instrument. So yeah, it's probably some blend of those two pianos together.
Sounded great. And many people I know that get complimented on their piano sounds will say that they've blended. Our screeners are actually pickier than I am. Sometimes I hear complaints from members where the screener said the piano sounded like a sample to me, and I listen to it and go, that sounds fine. And ultimately the screeners turn out to be right. If you listen again, second pass, go, oh, a lot of samples don't have air in them. There's something about moving air in a room. And I'm sure that they mic them great. They're great sounding pianos, really top-notch engineers, but somehow they don't sound electronic or mechanical. They just sound sampled. So I know that a lot of people do that. Well, this has been great. Once again, thank you for your generosity and courage in letting everybody hear your bad stuff sounds better than a lot of people's better stuff. So there's that. But no, highly educational. I can't remember the last time I saw so much enthusiasm in the chat room for a Taxi TV. So I'm going to push this one hard. Awesome. Maybe I'll stick this in the newsletter toward the end of this month. Normally I wait and send things out a couple months after they've aired, but this one needs to be heard and seen. So good job
I'm glad to help any members I can with, whatever mistakes I've made.
Well, this was highly educational, and I always enjoy having you on the phone. Greg and I have become friends over a year, and you get it. I love the fact that you've always understood that the screeners aren't here to hurt you or be a gatekeeper and keep you out. They're here to enable you and get you in. And I think that just acknowledging that and working with them almost like a partner has helped you progress really fast in the short amount of time that I've known you anyway. So there you go. Thank you very much. I will see all of you guys back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock for a Quarantini happy hour. That's it. Same time, same station. Greg, thanks once again. And bye, you guys. Thank you all for asking great questions. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. And we will see you tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Bye-bye.